Soul Tribe. Welcome to my YouTube channel where we talk about the intersections of psychotherapy, pop culture, socio-politics, and soul level healing. So today's topic is on why you crave love but fear abandonment, healing an anxious attachment style. So I was introduced to this attachment style theory 2 years prior to starting my graduate school program to become a marriage and family therapist. By the way, I'm expected to graduate in 2027. So like I have a whole year to do a clinical, and then I'll be done. I'll take my national exam and then be on my way to become a licensed therapist. But that's gonna take some time. Anyway, I dedicated years to my personal development, healing, and spiritual journey. What led me to this point, you may ask? You guessed it. It was a devastating, abrupt breakup and quarter life identity crisis that uprooted many of my own insecurities, childhood, teenage trauma, relational wounds, and a fear of abandonment. I was on a mission to self heal because honestly, I didn't have any of the resources to acquire therapy then that I do now, right? And I also seen how relational wounds impacted my family and specifically the women in my family. And I knew that that wasn't the path that I wanted to take. So I took initiative and I decided to take my own healing in my own hands. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to empower myself. One of my spiritual business coaches referred me to a book called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents by Lindsay Gibson. When I landed on chapter 4, the 4 types of emotionally immature parents, a light bulb appeared for me. It was like the light bulb sent me on an upward spiral to a journey of deep self awareness and learning the terminology of what I couldn't identify or call by name, right? Because in layman's terms, if you're not someone who's going to school for this type of things, you don't know what is what. Like, you don't know. Like, a lot of people didn't know what gaslighting was until you had influencers who just so happen to have a background in mental health or therapy to speak out on it. A lot of people didn't know what narcissism was a couple of years ago. Now everybody and their mama know what it is, right? So when I was able to identify what I was going through and call it by name, it felt like a weight had been lifted because finally I felt understood and I felt seen, and I didn't feel like I was going crazy or like I was tripping, because a lot of the times we get invalidated, right? And so when you go so long being invalidated, you start to feel like the odd one. When you start to pick up on books and materials, and you start gathering with people who are on the same pathway as you don't feel as weird, or you don't feel as left out. And that's the beautiful thing about self-exploration. It is important to know that there are 4 types of attachment styles: secure, anxious, avoidant, and disorganized. So according to Schmittel, she wrote that individuals with an anxious ambivalent attachment style grow up with the inability to rely on their caregivers due to inconsistent emotional availability and not being comforted in a timely, coherent fashion. Signs of an adult with this attachment style may show up as someone who has a tough time acquiring individual pursuits, like doing things outside of their partners or friendships, and they constantly need reassurance and need to be a part of some type of relationship. They yearn for closeness, yet have a deep fear of abandonment, leading them to place others on a pedestal while having self-loathing beliefs. And this can be found on the Attachment Project .com. So referring back to Schmittel, individuals with this attachment style are more likely to internalize conflicts and immediately blame themselves, even if they do not do anything inherently wrong or did not do anything inherently wrong. So here are the top 7 signs of an anxious ambivalent attachment style. And this is as stated by WebMD 2024. And it's also followed by my personal and professional experiences with clients as a certified emotional wellness coach. So 1, you have a lack of boundaries because you either fear conflict, You believe that enmeshment equals love, or you believe it'll bring you closer to whomever you are in a relationship with. And when I talk about relationships, for the most part, I'm not just talking about romantic relationships, like relationships as in co-workers, family, friends, things of that nature. So in this case, you think it'll bring you closer to whomever you are in a relationship with. And all of that is rooted in the fear of rejection, the loss of control, and or abandonment. Two, you can be clingy, overbearing, or needy. Your sense of worthiness often hinges on the behaviors or reactions of others. So, this can lead to a topsy turvy self image because your self image is not grounded in anything stable. And it's almost like you're giving your power away to an unreliable external source. Three, you have ruminating, maybe even obsessive thoughts about your ex after a breakup. This is often a sign that your brain is trying its best to cope with grief and the loss of someone who played a major role in your life. So either you fantasize about a life that never was, you put the ex on a pedestal by forgetting their imperfections, or you reminisce on all of the good times, quote unquote, while blurring out all of the bad. And that creates an unbalanced and accurate perspective of the relationship. In essence, you still have those rose colored glasses on, right? Um, Four, you sabotage your relationships by creating fights and scenarios that force the other party to show you how much they care. No matter how much they show you or tell you that they care about you, somewhere in the back of your mind is a little voice saying that you don't believe them. So you either need a lot of reassurance by asking them for it, or you'll create situations to see if they really care or not, i.e., making them jealous, posting thirst traps to get your partner riled up, maybe even engaging in some activity that you know will upset them, like really inappropriate stuff, right? Because you want them to show you that they care. So you'll do things that you know will get their attention. You know what I'm saying? And that's the little girl, little boy in you, right? Five, you fear intimacy. Into me you see, and vulnerability. You were probably met with judgment, harsh criticism, or resistance during the times that you were vulnerable, which are all triggers for what you fear most: rejection and abandonment. Your past experiences has taught you that being vulnerable is not safe, and therefore truly being seen for who you are, good, bad, and ugly, feels like an incoming threat or attack, even though being seen by the right person should feel like the love that you crave. Because imagine you are with someone and you're vulnerable, you're honest, you're authentic, and you show them all of your cards like, hey, this is me. This is me in my good light, in my bad light, the ugly light, the pretty light, all of it. This is me. And that partner looks at you and says, I still choose you. That's the type of love that you crave, right? Six, you have a core limiting belief that says, I am unworthy. I'm not valued. I am unlovable. You do not have to say these statements out loud for them to be subconscious beliefs. So even if you think you're confident, you can still behave in ways that say otherwise. Your unconscious mind will override your behavioral patterns every single time. And that is until you become aware of those unhealthy patterns and work to change them. And a lot of this reminds me of when I watch reality TV shows like Real Housewives or like Basketball Wives, who you look at these women and for some of them you think, wow, these women are really confident in themselves, blase, blase. But when you see how they act around other women or how they act when they're triggered, you obviously can see that there's maybe some unresolved things that they have not tapped into yet, or maybe they are hiding, you know? Seven, you claim to be an empath, which may very well be true. However, a lot of you are just hypervigilant in your relationships. You're highly attuned to changes in mood, tone, body language, and behavior. And this can be both a blessing and a curse. So, for example, on one hand, as a healer, this trait has allowed me to catch onto behaviors in my clients that others probably would have missed because of how subtle the changes are. But on the other hand, if not put in check, I tend to overanalyze interactions, which can lead to anxiety. And so I've gotten way better at this. Because in the past I would just kind of be in my head about it, but now I'm able to decipher, what actually is someone's behavior changing and what is just a subtle, movement or subtle body language, tone of voice, things of that nature. So this next section of the video, I want to talk about how I learned to work with this attachment style with the intention of becoming more and more secure. So radical honesty. I had to be radically honest with myself about my behavior and emotional experiences. The truth of the matter is, you cannot heal a lie. You cannot heal a lie. I had to look at myself in the mirror and acknowledge all that came with me, the good, bad, and ugly. And guess what? When I made peace with the parts of myself I did not like, I either worked to change them or I unapologetically loved myself enough to accept the things that I could not change. I showed myself grace for all of the times that I did not receive it. I allowed myself to be human. Therefore, vulnerability stopped feeling like a weapon and it started to feel like real love and intimacy. In the case that someone were to abandon or reject me for living in my authenticity, I had the mental fortitude, the wherewithal, and enough self acceptance to know that I would be fine regardless. My role does not start at their approval, and it certainly does not stop at their rejection. Unloading the bag. Bag lady, you gon' hurt your back. Dragging all them bags like that. I guess nobody ever told you all you must hold on to is you, is you, is you. That was sung by the beautiful Erykah Badu. And instead of holding everything inside and acting like everything was okay, I gave myself permission to feel no matter how intense the emotions felt. Mourning, grieving, anger, sadness, all of those emotions are valid, right? I did not judge any of these emotions that came up for me. Instead, I became curious as to where these emotions came from and what purpose they served for me during that season. Emotions are like water. A still body of water that has no movement becomes murky, muddy, and infested with parasites and bacteria. What I find interesting is that even if the surface appears calm, there can be strong hidden currents and undertows. Similarly, when you do not allow yourself to express these emotions or allow them to move like water, you can become physically sick. The feeling that cannot find its expression through tears may cause other organs to weep. This is a quote by Henry Maudsley. The National AG Safety Database states that 90% of illnesses and diseases are stress related, with that said, would you rather really, really go ahead and just cry? Yes, it was another song by Ray. But really, would you really go ahead and just cry? Let it out, babe. There's no use of holding all that inside. Let it out because tears are a form of cleansing. It's a form of cleansing. Investigative questions. I consciously looked for patterns in my relationships by asking questions like, what is the dominant role that I find myself playing, rather unconsciously or consciously? What is the dominant role that they play? Have most of my dating experiences operated this way? What are my reoccurring feedback loops? Asking myself these thought provoking investigative questions gave me a chance to sit back and really look at myself and my behavior and how I operate within romantic relationships specifically. Because the dominant role that I played in all of my relationships, I can say, is, except for the last one, was one of me playing small, abandoning myself to be whoever I thought my partner needed me to be. It was being so codependent to the point where their moods and their behaviors and the way they reacted, it impacted me emotionally and spiritually. When I love so deeply. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, when it's coming from a place of this anxious attachment style, that love shows up in ways that is very self detrimental because it's rooted in fear. It's rooted in not wanting to be abandoned. And I knew that if I wanted to improve my self image, if I wanted to attract better experiences within romantic partnerships, I had to do better for myself first and foremost. And so when I asked the question, what are my reoccurring feedback loops? Meaning, what behaviors, thoughts, and beliefs keep showing up for me? In therapy, we call this circular causality. This theory relies on the understanding that our interactions are interwoven with each other, whereby one's behavior influences responses from others, creating a cyclical effect. So it's not merely as linear as people may think. I shifted my way of thinking from self judgment to curiosity because once you've become conscious of a thing, you can name it. If you name it, it's even more likely that you can heal it. And it's like going to the doctor's office when you're sick. If you get all of the tests run and doctors cannot tell you what's going on, you'll probably feel defeated. Similarly, when you find yourself in a toxic pattern and cannot decipher the root of the cause, you wind up with feelings of despair and hopelessness and stalemate. Now let's move on to self love and grace. I showed myself extra love and grace for where I was. I felt very fragile, sensitive, and emotionally and spiritually sore. I want you to imagine a fresh wound or injury. There are certain things that you aren't going to do around that wound. You're not going to be careless or move about your day how you would normally. Common sense would tell you to treat that wound with extra love and care by being mindful of your body movements to ensure that you do not cause further damage. Being cognizant keeps you from accidentally bumping into something or keeps you from using harsh products that could irritate the wound. You'd avoid picking at the wound to prevent any infection, right? So when you are actively going through a healing process, you probably feel wounded, vulnerable, and fragile. This is not the time to be judgmental, your own worst critic, or crash out by indulging in reckless behavior just because you want a temporary escape. Spoiler, you get that temporary escape, and then what? You bust the windows out of his car, you go sleep with Tom, Dick, and Harry. You go fight another girl or a guy, whatever your identity is. You still have to go back to yourself. So there's no amount of substance abuse, sexual acts, or violence that will ease your heart or fill the void that you are trying to fill. Show yourself extra love and grace. Mother yourself by being nurturing and kind, protective, non judgmental. A loving mother sees you, hears you, and validates your experience while also being honest for the sake of you growing from heartache and moving forward to becoming a whole human being. So she's not going to coddle you in the sense of lying to you and not allowing you to take accountability. She's going to comfort you, right? She's going to nurture you. She's going to see you, hear you, But what she won't allow you to do is fester in a pool of lies. She's going to show you a mirror, but lovingly. She's going to hold you accountable lovingly so that you would be encouraged to evolve, learn, and move forward. Moving on to reparenting little Kyra. I had to address a lot of my childhood and teenage trauma, which were often the root causes of many beliefs, behavioral patterns, and emotional processes. The foundation of your subconscious mind is in a critical development stage from the time that you're born to right around the age of 7 to 8 years of age. Disclaimer: this is not about placing blame because we are still taking accountability for our actions as adults. What we're doing is taking into account historical context and family origin to understand who we are as complex beings and how we arrived at the place that we are today. I know that everyone has different opinions on this matter. However, I believe that when we do not get to the root causes of our pain and wounds, we fall victim to shallow or surface level healing, which essentially is like putting a band-aid on a bullet wound. Let's go back to the doctor's analogy. Once you can put a name to the cause of illness, wouldn't you want the doctor to try their best to get to the root of what could be causing these painful, uncomfortable symptoms? Why would you want to keep going to the doctor for the same issue? Similarly, why would you want to keep experiencing the same toxic behavioral patterns and negative feedback loops? Healing my childhood trauma led me to understand my parents' upbringing and how they learned to cope with their individual trauma, which created the anxious attachment style within me. From that experience, I learned to extend grace to them, yet still setting healthy boundaries. From there, with time and practice, because let me tell you, it took time. I'm not new to this journey. I've been on this journey for about 10 years. It started way back in 2015. I was able to reparent myself by learning how to fulfill my own needs and honor and manage my emotions and validate my existence as a human deserving of love first and foremost. Like I said, with time and practice, I became more and more secure within myself while also creating healthy, secure relationships around me. My friendships with women matured and got better and improved. I started attracting more quality men, or I should say, when you are in this healing journey, you're going to attract all types of people, right? But when you do the work to become more secure within yourself, you're able to stifle out or shuffle out who should be in your alliance and who should not. Everybody is not deserving of this version of you. And doing this work will help you to be able to stifle, all right, who needs to be in my space, who deserves my time and energy, and who does not. All right. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed creating it. And if so, please make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, get my engagement numbers up. Please share it to a family member or friend who you think might have this attachment style and what they can learn from it. Even if you don't have this attachment style, you can still learn a lot from this video. But again, thank you, and I'll be talking to you soon. Bye.